Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is the weekly live stream. I actually do it a couple of times a week, where we talk about hiring, employment, careers, networking, job interviews, resumes, all that kind of stuff, where to discover jobs, and this sort of thing. But we do it with a bit of a slant. I'm trying to sort of acknowledge how stuff actually happens in reality, as opposed to the theory of perhaps how it should go, where we talk about the real world. And let's face it, this process sucks and it's confusing and there's a lot of contradictions out there. So that's what we try and talk about here. The title of today's episode is How to Answer What is Your Current Salary? So we're going to be talking about that. This is within the context of a job interview or a job application, anything like that. We're going to talk about that. This is episode number 18 of Honest HR Nitrous. And as always, I want to give a shout out to my YouTube channel members, my super thanks donors, my Patreons, and my participants. That's you guys, because you guys are awesome. Thank you for joining me today. This is an interactive live stream, so that means that you can ask me questions, you can react, you can comment, and I will see all of those things and react to it. In fact, I don't really have too much of an agenda or a script, so I'm going to be relying on reacting to your questions and comments. So you should see a chat box nearby. Get in the chat. Let me know what's up. Let me know what you're struggling with, what you're wondering about, and we will go from there. But to kick things off, until we get some activity in the chat, I'm going to talk about this question. What is your current salary? Now, you have probably been asked this question if you've gone to a few job interviews in your life, or you filled out a few job applications, probably online, and this is probably one of the things that they have asked you at some point. It's a different question from what are your salary expectations or what are your compensation expectations. That's not what they're asking. They're asking, how much money are you making now? Okay. And a lot of times, people are taken aback by this. They never planned for this type of question. They don't know what significance it is, or they might have suspicions why they're being asked this, but they don't know precisely. So you get people that don't know how to handle it. Furthermore, there's some places in the world where they're not allowed to ask you this, but most people don't live in those places. And even if it's technically illegal for them to ask this question, in your region, that doesn't stop some people from asking it anyway. So that's why this is important to discuss. Now, a couple of things I want to get out of the way first. Just so everybody knows, okay, in pretty much every country in the world, at least all the countries that I'm aware of, there is no centralized database where employers can look up your current salary or your salary history. Okay. Now, there are some minor exceptions to that. For example, if you work in government in your country, government's a little bit different because it has to be held accountable, or at least it is in theory. So one of the ways it does that in most countries is it publishes publicly all government employees' salaries. So you could be able to, in theory, look that up. Okay. And because of that, if you work in government and you have a history of working in government, yes, that information would be publicly available, okay? But most people don't work in government. It's a small percentage of people that have government jobs. Everybody else, for you guys, especially you guys in the private sector, there is no centralized database of this information, okay? So if you have kept this information confidential, if you've never told anyone how much you make, and you're not sort of publishing that far and wide, there's really no way that they should be able to find that out, okay? Now, there's always exceptions. There's really weird extreme cases where you get unhinged employers that do pull all kinds of shenanigans, some of which are illegal, and try and get this information. At least they try asking people For example, it is possible for a company that you are talking to right now to call up a previous employer of yours or a current employer of yours if you've given them the information for your current employer. If you've told them, I work at this company in this department, this is my boss, and here is his or her phone number. Now, if you've done that, it is possible for any employer that you reach out to contact that person and ask them and say, hey, you don't know me, but I understand you employ this person. What are you paying them? Right? Now, once again, most people, if they receive a call like that, will not give out that information, but you never know. There's exceptions here and there where people are exceptionally stupid and they will just say, oh, well, I pay them this much, not knowing really who they're talking to. So it is possible to get that. However, for the vast majority of people, that's not going to happen. Okay, so that's the reality. Okay, so I wouldn't personally, if it were me, I wouldn't act as if that is a real possibility. It's the odds of that to me seem like the odds of getting struck by lightning. Do you live your life in perpetual fear of getting struck by lightning? Probably not, right? So I would proceed as if that doesn't happen. And if it does, these people know this information. You might be at a little bit of a disadvantage in a salary negotiation, but it's not worth planning for. So that's kind of the reality of these things. Now, if you're the type of person that has spread this information far and wide, you've told everyone who wants to know how much you're making, then the likelihood of an employer being able to discover this goes up. Okay? Sometimes companies can share information. They may or may not be supposed to be doing that, but sometimes that happens. Okay? But if you've buttoned your lip about this stuff, there's really no way they can access that. Okay? So that's the reality. That's what you're up against. So companies don't have access to this, but they would love to know it, especially when it comes down to the salary negotiation phase of your employment process, your hiring process. Okay, so what better way for them to find this out than to ask you directly? You're sitting down for a job interview and they say, hey, so tell me, how much money do you make? And you say, well, I make this, right? Now, they have no way of knowing if that's accurate, but if you disclose it and they're proceeding as if that's a truthful answer, you can be at a bit of a disadvantage. The more information they know about you when it comes to negotiations and your position, the worse it is for you. Okay, so that's kind of what's going on here. So a lot of employers will ask this question because it works. A lot of people will just answer. They won't have really planned a very detailed answer and rehearsed it. So being unprepared for it, they just blab out what they're making. And now the employer knows. Sometimes candidates are comfortable with doing that. Sometimes they aren't, but they do it anyway. Okay, so that's kind of what's going on around this question. Let me know in the chat if you have been asked this, how you answered, how it turned out. I'm sure everybody would be interested to hear that, and I will see that and react to it if you'd like me to. So the other thing is that when they ask this question, most often they realize that they are not entitled to an answer. Okay. For example, if I meet you on the street, there's nothing to stop me coming up to you and saying, yeah, hi, my name is Bill. I'm going to need your credit card number, right? There's nothing to stop me asking that question. I'm not breaking any laws by asking it. But am I entitled to know that information? Are you entitled to give me it? Of course not. So that's kind of what's going on here. There's nothing stopping them in most regions of the world. There's nothing stopping them from asking this question. But there's nothing that says that they are entitled to know that. There's no law that forces you to disclose this information to them. And because it's generally not to your advantage for them to know this, right? You would want to not tell them, right? However, in a job interview, there's a lot of social pressure. First of all, you're trying to ingratiate yourself to them. You're trying to make them like you. And if you refuse to answer their questions and maybe get a bit upset about it, because maybe they're asking something slightly inappropriate, that's probably not going to endear you to them. So there's a lot of pressure on people to be forthcoming and just give them the answer, right? Now, if you lie and give a different answer, like you give a seemingly truthful answer, but it's actually false, that can complicate things for you down the line. If you give a low number, then they will form perhaps a lower impression of your value. And that's not good. They'll offer you less money if you get to that point. If you give a higher number thinking that, I want to seem very valuable, and that would convince them to offer me more money later if we get that far, you run the risk of pricing yourself out of the running. Maybe there's other candidates that are just as good as you in their eyes that aren't asking for that much money, or they believe would accept less money than you, so they would most likely offer the job to them and not you. So it complicates things if you give them an answer and it's a false answer, whichever way you slice it. Okay, so the question is, how can we answer their question and not create a ton of awkwardness in the job interview when we want them to like us, but yet not disclose this confidential and personal information that they're trying to pry out of us, right? That's kind of what's going on here. So there's a lot of social pressure, and a lot of recruiters or hiring managers that ask this, they employ any number of tactics to try and put pressure on you to answer the question. And a couple of them are by, first of all, asking very directly, and saying, how much money do you currently make? It's not a subtle thing. It's very direct. Okay. They might say things like, we need you to tell us how much money you make, or our process is you have to tell us, you have to disclose this. And then you have to do this before we can give you an offer. Like, they'll make up whatever rules and they'll say whatever they need to say to put pressure on you. All of which are false, by the way, because they're not entitled to this information, right? They'll sometimes insist the answer is mandatory. You have to tell us, right? Which is false and may be illegal depending on what region you're in. They'll do other more subtle things, like they'll ask you the question and then they'll leave a very large gap in the conversation afterwards. So it feels very awkward, and they'll do this intentionally to make you feel uncomfortable not giving an answer. That's another tactic. And I hate to say it, but these things work, especially on younger people, especially on people that are less experienced at job interviews or, having negotiations with people in person. These tactics do work. That's why they do them. They usually get people to cough up an answer when they're not entitled to an answer, right? So you have to be prepared for them to try these tactics on you. Okay. Now, I want to tell a bit of a story. I've told this before, but this is relevant to this question. Okay. Because this is what could be going on, and sometimes is going on. I wouldn't assume it's going on, but sometimes we see this. Okay, there's been a proliferation of fake job postings relatively recently. We're seeing more of these, and I'm not sure what the percentage is. It could be 20%, 30%, something like that. I've heard all kinds of numbers. But when you look at the posted jobs that are on the internet, 20 or 30% of those are not actual jobs. And what's really going on, there's several things that could be going on. Here's one of the things that I've seen, okay? Okay, I'm just going to tell the story. So there's company A and company B, okay? And company A posts a job and says, we're hiring for a certain position, okay? Now, company A has competitors in its industry, and one of them is Company B. Okay? Now, Company A would love to know how much compensation their competitor, Company B, is paying their employees. Okay? This would help Company A be able to attract talent away from their competitor, try and get the good employees to leave the competitor and work for them instead. It would help Company A understand their competitor's cost structure. This would give them intelligence about maybe how low Company B could lower their prices if they wanted to wage a price war or something. There's all kinds of reasons. So you can't access this information directly. Company B doesn't want the public knowing how much they're paying all their employees. They keep that confidential for a good reason. Company A would love to know that. So what they can do, one of the tactics that we've seen is they will post a job. They'll say, we're hiring for this role with the goal of attracting the employees that work for Company B. And they'll get all kinds of people that apply for it. Some of them will be employees of Company B that are thinking, hey, maybe Company A is going to pay me more if I go work for them. So they apply. They go down to a job interview with Company A. Company A asks them this question. So, what's your current salary? The candidate who works for Company B tells them, this is what I make, and my current employer is Company B. So Company A says, okay, thank you. We'll take that into account when we make, our offer, right? Now, unbeknownst to the candidate, it turns out that this is a fake job. There is no job. Company A doesn't end up hiring anyone. It was just a case of industrial espionage to try and get information about what their competitor, Company B, is paying their employees. And that was the whole point of this. So Company A learns this information about Company B, doesn't hire anyone, and shuts down their job search. Okay, and that's what it was all about, right? So now I'm not saying this is like what the normal thing that happens, but this has been known. This kind of thing is known, and it involves this question, where they probe for confidential information that they are not entitled to. Maybe it could be asking you details of the work you do at Company B, right? Like this kind of thing has been known. That's one of the reasons why there are fake jobs out there. I don't think this is the main reason, but this is one of the reasons. Okay? So just be aware of that. Like this is information that they are not entitled to. Okay? And if you do work in government, they wouldn't be able to find it out anyway. They don't need to ask you to get this information. It would be much more reliable if they just looked it up, right? Okay, so after all this setup, how the hell do you answer this question? Okay, this is what I would say. Now that we know that we shouldn't give out the information, how do we do it politely? How do we do it firmly? How do we resist all the tactics and the pressure they put, but yet not create a ton of awkwardness in the job interview in the process? Here's how. Here's what I would recommend, okay? They ask me, they say, what is your current salary? And I would say, well, I actually have a personal policy of not disclosing that for reasons of privacy and confidentiality. I'm sure you understand. And as you say this, you have a smile on your face. Now, what do I mean by that? Do I mean like this? No, I mean a smile like this. You see, I'm trying to look pleasant and friendly and approachable, right? So I would say it like that. I have a policy of not disclosing that, unfortunately, for reasons of privacy and confidentiality. I'm sure you understand, right? Something like that. Now, the question is, what do you do if they sort of brush that aside and they say, well, we need to know? Where they ask the question again, you must tell us. Here's what you do. You keep the smile on your face. You don't let them annoy you or frustrate you. And you give the same answer again. You say, well, like I said, I don't disclose that. Privacy issues, confidentiality issues, These are very real. So as you can understand, that's why I have this policy, right? And whatever they say, if they do prompt you again, or whatever tactic they try, that's your response. They're not going to get anything else out of you, right? And it diffuses the awkwardness. The only awkwardness will be directly caused by them, which you have no control over. And it's obvious who's creating the awkwardness, but it fails. And usually the way this goes is once they see you're not going to budge, they move on. And that's how it works. So that's what I would say to this question. Okay, let's go over to you guys here. I see we're starting to get some people in the chat. Get in the chat. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your questions. And I will help you out if I can. Hassan, if I'm saying that right, I'm sure I'm not. Hassan says, the recruiter by himself sets a desired salary while the client is open. It's a 20 to 25% above my current salary. Can I negotiate that number more at the offer, or does this mean that's my asking? Okay, I'm having a little trouble with the grammar, but I think I get the gist of what you're asking. Listen, if you are currently employed, okay, and let's say you make 100, okay? If you are currently employed and it's not like you're going to get laid off soon or anything, like you don't know that, but you're looking for another job, it only makes sense to take a job that pays more than what you're currently making. Now, whether it's 20 or 25%, that's up for debate. But it should be more, and it should be not a trivial amount more. It should be a significant amount more, something that you feel the benefit of. So if that would be 10%, maybe that if you would feel the benefit of having 10%, that would be noticeable. Then you should ask for at least that. Or it doesn't make any sense, because if you are giving up a job that it's something you have, it's something that's secure or reasonably secure, and it's something you're comfortable with, you're over the learning curve, right? It doesn't make sense to throw that away and take the risk of taking a new job somewhere else, because there's always a risk in taking a new job. First of all, one of the risks are that they lied to you about everything. You take the job and it turns out the job you took is not the one you were promised. Or you walk into a nightmare situation. It's a toxic environment. Your boss is a psychopath. Like, you don't know these things. There's always a chance that that might happen. Okay. Or you don't work out at the job. They don't think that you do a very good, they don't think your performance is very good. So, they lay you off or fire you shortly thereafter. Like you don't know what you're walking into. So you should always be compensated for the risk you take, okay, with a noticeable premium above what you're making now, okay? Now, if you're not employed, if you're making zero and you need a job, okay, and you don't have any other offers or any other opportunities lined up that look like they're going to work, then you don't have a lot of power here, and you may have to take whatever they offer if you're desperate for money. Like, it's just that simple. I don't think you need me to tell you this. You probably figured that out on your own. Okay, so how much you ask for or hold out for is going to depend on your situation. It doesn't depend on them. They can say they're going to pay you whatever you want, but at the end, you have to agree, and that's up to you, right? So you're only going to accept something that makes sense for you. You need to know what makes sense for you. Okay, you need to analyze your situation, and your situation depends on what alternatives there are. Okay, it's not a matter of persuasion. They want to pay low, you want them to pay high. They're not going to come around to your way of thinking. So that's just the reality. Okay, so I mean, you can negotiate whatever you want. If you had another job offer in your hand from another company that was going to pay you 125, right? That makes the negotiation with these people very easy. You just say, I need 125. Let me know if you can do that. If you can, I'll be at this phone number or this email address. See ya. Like, obviously you wouldn't do it like that, but that's basically the situation. You're not going to take a job for less than 125 when you got another offer from a third party for 125. It doesn't make any sense. So, you know what I mean? How you negotiate and what you choose to say entirely depends on your situation and what options you have. And you need to, the more options you get, the more power you have to demand something. And if they don't feel like giving it to you, no harm done, because you've got a better alternative, right? So that's the name of the game. It's hard to only have one option and go in there and play hardball. Like you don't have the power. You can bluff, but any bluff you make, prepare for them to call your bluff, and that's where you run into problems, right? So that's the problem. So to do it properly, it's about having more options. YouTube 7149, that's a name that just rolls off the tongue, says, is there a formal term or phrase for that behavior of sticking to one answer? By the way, that's a cool strategy, clean and simple. I don't know if it has a name. Like, it's just the process of having made up your mind and having your act together, I guess. I'm not sure if it has a name. If it does have a name, I'm not immediately recollecting it. But no, I mean, that should be your position on a lot of things. Like, for example, salary negotiation should be like that too. You do your homework before you go down to the interview or before you have an exchange with them, right? You analyze what your position is, where you figure out, this is how low I will go, right? This far and no further. That's my reservation price. That means it's the lowest you'll accept the job for, right? They will have their own reservation price. They'll say, this is the absolute highest we can go. If the candidate demands more than that, it's a no, right? So they'll have theirs and you'll have yours, right? But you work this out in advance. And then there might be more subtlety to it because it may be multidimensional. You might not be just discussing price. Maybe there's other variables, like say, okay, weeks of vacation or days of vacation, sick days, different perks. Is there a bonus? Is there performance pay? Things like this, right? There's variables, multi dimensions to this deal. So what you would do is you'd work all that out in advance and say, like, I can't go below this unless they're prepared to give me like 4 weeks vacation a year or something, right? But you do your homework on that and you figure that stuff out before you get there. So when you're having an exchange with them, you know what your position is, and therefore you can give pretty firm answers if necessary and stick to them, right? It's generally not good if you think about this stuff for the first time when you're in the interview with them. That's usually not a recipe for success. That's usually what they're hoping will happen, and then they get you for cheap. Or they pull the wool over your eyes and say things like, oh, in this job, most people make only this much. And you go, oh, okay. You accept that, which is a lie, right? And then they get you for cheap. And you think you're getting a good deal. And what they're doing is mentally inside their head, they're going like that, right? They're like, we got this person for cheap. And they look like heroes to their higher ups, right? What would be the sign of a good recruiter? Someone who secures a good candidate for $1 million? Is that hard? If you're offering $1 million, is it hard to get a good person? No. A good recruiter is someone who can get a good candidate for a good price, right? Don't be fooled. At the end of the day, that's definitely a factor of what's going on behind the scenes. Sujit says, we are a startup, so we are looking at hiring people more on variable income and reasonable fixed income. So how do you answer that knowing I'm jobless, in debt, need fixed income? How do you handle it? Well, like, okay, if they're offering something that doesn't work for you, I you have a couple of choices here. Either you accept it or you don't. I mean, there's really not much more to it than that. The way, like you're the employer, right? Like, is that what I understand? Because you said we are a startup, but then you say I'm jobless and in debt and need income. So I'm a little confused on which side of the table you are, but usually startups work best, especially in the very beginning, by hiring people that believe in the startup, okay? And that's consistent with giving them variable income, right? They usually don't work well when you're hiring someone who considers themselves an employee. Like, I'm here to punch a clock, I'll do whatever you say, but at 8 hours I'm out of here, and then I collect my fixed pay, right? That's usually not a recipe for success for a startup. In the beginning, you really need people that will work a lot harder than they would, and are compensated less. Like, their sort of work to compensation ratio is very, very high, a lot higher than a typical employee. They'll put in a lot more hours, they'll get paid a lot less because they believe in the idea. And the reason they do that is because they've got variable pay, so that if the idea pays off, right, they share in the return, right? They make more money later, right? Now, I'm not talking about the owners here. I'm talking about the first few employees, the key employees that you're going to rely on. Okay, so that's what you're looking for. And if you don't get that, if you just get people that are punching a clock and they don't really care how the business does, good things generally don't happen, right? So, so if you're the employee, if you're the candidate that needs a job, as it sounds like you've already figured out, the startup is not really what you're looking for. If you have nothing, then this is better than nothing. But you know what I mean? So if you have no other alternatives, I would take it. And then you continue your job search while you're employed with this startup. You know what I'm saying? That's the best thing for you to do, right? Okay, but that's kind of, there's no magical thing that just gives you exactly what you need with this type of employer, I'm afraid. It might be worth just sitting down, if you can, with the owners and just talking about options and talking about what you can do and what they're prepared to do. You know, just have like almost like an informational interview, you know, a pseudo informational interview just to discuss this kind of stuff. Maybe there's some other things they could do. Julia says, "Hi, Bill. At the offering stage, if I counteroffer too high, will they withdraw the offer without another counteroffer?" Yes, that's the danger. How many rounds of negotiation is there usually? Well, listen, it depends. If you're getting a job at a gas station, it's going to be completely different than if you're getting a job as a divisional vice president at a big global multinational. I mean, it really varies. For most sort of worker level jobs, you know, they'll usually do some kind of salary question as part of the initial screening. So, so early in the process, they will ask you, what are your salary expectations, right? And the entire reason they're asking that is not to give you what you want, but it's like a go, no go test. If what you say is a number and it's higher than a certain number, a certain hurdle, it's an automatic rejection, and that's where the process is terminated with you. You know, so there's usually something like that. So you try and avoid the question because you're flying blind. You don't know what they're looking for. The other thing is that, like, a lot of people, when they hear this, they react by saying, well, I'm just going to be honest and give this high number that I want. And if they eliminate me, oh well, right? Now, okay, sometimes that might work. But the problem is that if you do that, it eliminates you from a lot of opportunities that would have been worth your while. Because think about it. When you go to the store and you want to buy, I don't know, a loaf of bread or something, what's the first, like, you go to the bread aisle and you see like 1,000 different, you know, loaves of bread made by all these different companies. And what's the first thing you do? You look at their price, right? You know nothing about this bread. Some of the bread could be made from sawdust, And some of the bread could be made from cocaine. You have no idea, right? You have no idea what you're getting. It could be really good or really bad. So, but what's the first thing you do is you look at the price, right? And if you see this loaf is for $1 and that loaf is for $10, usually what a lot of people do is they eliminate all the ones for $10 just based on price, right? And then they look at the ones that are like $1 or $2, right? That's kind of what's going on in the hiring process for most companies. Okay, they'll look at all these candidates and they say like, look, we've got 500 applicants. We've got to narrow this down. So we're just going to look for some basic stuff, and if we're going to ask how much money they want, and if they want more than this, we're just going to eliminate them, right? Meanwhile, one of those candidates, they could have been Albert Einstein. They could have been able to save your company, right? They could have been the most valuable hire they ever made. But they didn't even look at them properly. They just eliminated them out of hand because they wanted a little bit more money, right? So what's good is to take this strategy where your strategy is the goal of this phase of the hiring process is always simply to get to the next stage of the hiring process. So if you send in an application, the sole goal you should have is to get an interview. And if you do the screening interview, your sole goal of how you conduct that should be to get the first serious interview, okay? And so on. And maybe they have a second interview, and then after that, they make a call and they make an offer, right? So the goal of the second interview is to get the offer, right? So don't think about the end of the process where like, I'm thinking about how much money I really want at the end in an offer. So I answer this way in the application. It's like, that usually is not the way to go, because a lot of jobs, they start thinking about price at the beginning, but as they get to know you, they start to see what you can bring to the role, and they go, I want that person. And by the time you get to the end of the process, there's a final three candidates, and that's where the hiring manager is always involved. Okay, they could have been involved earlier, but they're definitely involved in the final decision. And they say, I want that person because I thought they were awesome in the interview. I would love to work with that person. That means a lot to me. The other candidate, they're technically qualified and they're technically brilliant on paper, but I know I'm not going to get along with them and I don't want to have to work with them every day. So I want that one. And that's where you can ask for more money, right? Because they've seen your value. If you had said you wanted this money at the beginning, they would have eliminated you outright. But by the time you get to the end of the process, they see, okay, I'm willing to pay extra for them, right? So that's a real thing. Does that happen in every job? No, but it happens in a lot of jobs. And you don't know what you're dealing with. So it's good to maximize your opportunities and maximize your chances and use this strategy, okay? So you try and avoid the salary question when it's asked very early. Don't give any number. If it's on a form where it's mandatory, you have to put a number, you can't get out of it, put the lowest number you'd ever possibly accept if this turned out to be an absolute dream job. Okay? Think of it that way. And then as you learn more, as they disclose more about what the job actually is, you can always revise that number upwards. Right? If they disclose, your boss is going to be a colossal prick, you go, okay, well, now that I know that, I'm revising my salary requirement, right? So does that make sense? Okay. So don't play these games of countering really, really high until you get to the very, very end. They've made you an offer and it's painful for them to be rejected at that point. They've seen your value, they've decided on you, they got their heart set on you, they make you the offer, and you say, great, but I'm going to need this much, which is maybe a reasonable little bump, right? Then you can get it. Okay, so that's how I would do it. Yes, you do risk wasting your time if they honestly can't go any higher than that. But that's the risk you run, if you're concerned about wasting your time, you wouldn't do any of this, right? Because you're pursuing leads. And as long as the lead looks like it could have potential, it makes sense to pursue it. So that's kind of my take on that. Hopefully that makes sense. Hassan says, got it. Okay, perfect. The perfect network engineer. Wow. The perfect and most humble network engineer says your suggestions help. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad. Sujit says, thanks. Good idea. Use it as a stopgap arrangement and keep looking for new offers. Yeah. Look, not to be pessimistic, but it's about risk management. You don't know how long it's going to be before a good opportunity comes along. So if you can get something that's kind of okay in the meantime, at least that gives you maybe a little bit more breathing space, right? I understand that psychologically, people might not be jazzed about the idea of working for a company that you're not that interested in or something. You know what I mean? Like you might not want to take a job if it's not the perfect job. It doesn't pay you everything you want. But practically, it might be the right thing to do if that allows you to continue your job search, but you're employed. You've got income coming in. Depending on your situation, depending on how, like your financial situation. Mr. Friendly says, if they do not provide a range, it's a red flag. Simply say, I need more information about the job. Simply just say, I need more info. I don't know. Not necessarily. Like, listen. Okay. In some situations, definitely, I'll grant you that. They're obfuscating it for a reason. They don't want to, but it's not always the case. Don't always assume that. If it just feels really weird and slimy and you feel like they're being dishonest with you and they're hiding a bunch of stuff, I mean, that's one thing. But I wouldn't automatically make that connection and say, if they don't give me a range, then it means this. No, they might just be good at negotiating, right? If it's in a region where they don't have to, by law, disclose what their range is, and this is an early interview, I wouldn't necessarily make this connection, okay, in all cases. Okay, it might be kind of cool, actually, to have a very pleasant exchange or series of exchanges right up to the point where they give you an offer, and then you for the first time, you discuss salary. And that's where you can state your position for the first time, or that's where their position is revealed, right? I mean, if you're taking so much interviews that this is like a real hardship for you to like have your time taken up by these kind of things, fair enough. But unless you've got 10 other interviews lined up a week, I would entertain it and see how it plays out. Don't necessarily consider it a red flag. Some people might just not want to ruin the good vibes by this very adversarial question of salary. They might want to just try and get along with you and see how you are, see how relatable you are before they engage in a contentious kind of thing here. Jomar says, what if they provide a range but offer lower than the posted range? Well, then they're morons, right? If they say this job pays anywhere between 20 and 30, then you say, okay, that sounds fine. And they say, here's your offer. It's for 11. It's like, well, A, you're liars, or you're just so stupid you don't know what you said, which suggests you shoot your mouth off about things you don't know what you're talking about, right? Or you're trying to pull some kind of switch shenanigan thing on me, and it's so stupid and transparent. It's like, no. Is that the great way to start a job? It starts with you lying about something you said and contradicting? Of course not. So what if they do that? Well, that's the opinion that would form in my mind, right? And then you would decide what you do from there. I think most people would say, well, you did say the range for this position was between 20 and 30, and I've been proceeding on that basis. So unfortunately, I am going to need you to stick to that if you want me to agree to something, Hopefully that makes sense to you, right? So I'm going to need at least 20, as you yourself assured me that would be the minimum. Right now, if you're absolutely desperate, you don't have a lot of power here. If this is the only thing and you need it, then you might have to say yes, depending on the details. But you want to try and avoid that. Mr. Friendly asking, what is the approved pay range typically solves this 98% of the time, typically during a screening interview? Yeah, you can ask, but usually they don't answer it. I don't know if you've heard, tell me if you've heard this one before. The recruiter says, we don't know the range for this position. Have you ever heard that one? Right? Oh yeah, we're hiring for this role, but we don't know how much it pays, right? Have you heard that one before? That's pretty common for recruiters to say. It's such an insultingly simple tactic, right? And you lose a lot of integrity, a lot of credibility when you say this to people, right? Especially more experienced candidates, right? Everybody knows what that means. It means, of course we have a range, and I know what it is, but I'm not telling you, right? And so you react accordingly. You go, okay, well, that's understandable, And two can play that game, right? Not that you want a very adversarial kind of encounter, but it's this game of negotiation that they're showing you that they are your adversary when it comes to questions like this. In some ways, the recruiter is your ally. You want to get hired, they have the power to hire you, and they're looking at you to see if you're the best person. And if they feel you're the best person, they want you to be hired. So in some ways, they're your ally. But in some other ways, they're your adversary, like the salary question. You have opposite goals. So it's a very complex relationship, right? So you always want to keep it positive and friendly. You want them to want to deal with you and enjoy dealing with you. That's why people play these stupid little word games. But, it's all to further this goal of, I don't want to show you my hand. I don't want to show you what my position is. I want you to think a certain thing about what my position is, but I don't want to reveal the reality of it to you, because then you'd be able to outmaneuver me. Right? So you could try, and that's one element that I recommend when they ask you, what is your salary expectation? Right? They want you to show your hand, but they're not going to tell you the range. So the first thing you do is you say, I don't know at this point, right? And then if they give you trouble with that, you then move on to saying, well, look, this role has been approved, right? The hiring manager got this approved. Therefore, the compensation must have been approved also. So can I ask what the range of compensation is for this position? Right? That must have been disclosed and approved. So what is it? It exists. You should know it. What is it? Right? And that's when they say, we don't know. Right? I can't remember, something like that, right? They don't want to give that. And then if that doesn't work, then you counter that by, if they insist upon you giving a number, you don't give a number, you give a very wide range. I don't care what anybody says. That's how you do it. If you got to give them something, you give them a very wide range, very low to very high. Both limits, the high number and the low number, are technically possible, but they're a stretch. You don't say low numbers that are ridiculous or high numbers that are ridiculous. You say, a high number that's possible, but, unlikely, and a low number that's possible, but unlikely, right? And you say somewhere in there, and somewhere in there, I'm sure is fine. So it's very non-committal, but you've given them an answer. And if they push you more, you say, well, sorry, at this point, that's all I can say. I would need to know quite a bit more about the role before I can really pin it down for you. I haven't seen, I wouldn't go into details, but you haven't seen your boss, you haven't seen the workload, you haven't understood the culture, what are their expectations, how hard you have to work. Is there mandatory overtime? Are there all kinds of other demands on you? You don't know any of that, so you need to be compensated for it. Hassan says, knowing through the recruiter that you are the top and almost the only perfectly matched candidate as per their job description, does that give you an open hand to negotiate? Okay, so where is this information coming from? Is it coming from the recruiter? Okay. It's a lie, okay? Don't get your information about your position or anything from the recruiter. You are playing a game of poker against the recruiter, for people who understand what poker is. You see, they have a vested interest in convincing you that you're not worth very much, right? They also have a vested interest in convincing you that the amount of money that they're willing to pay you is above what you're worth. So you should be very happy to get it, right? That's what they want you to believe. If they could get every candidate to believe those two things, they would get a lot of talented people for very cheap, and those talented people would have very high morale working for them, and they would never leave if they believed those two facts, right? So they have a vested interest in convincing you of this. What's the most obvious way of convincing somebody this? Well, you tell them that. You say, well, for this type of role, often people in that role make this amount of money. It's this low amount of money, right? And you're listening to this and you're going, uh-huh. And then they say, well, we're prepared to pay you this much because we believe in you. We think you're awesome and you're our lead candidate and blah, 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 blah. We want you to make you feel good about this so that you will be happy with this amount of money that we offer you. You see how that works? You think you're getting a great deal. You think that they love you and that you're very happy to work for them, right? The reality is that they're paying you maybe the average amount or a little bit lower, right? That's what they're actually getting. That's what this really is. It turns out the range starts here and it goes all the way up here, but they're paying you this, right? But they don't want you to feel that you're at the bottom of the range, because then you'll feel like you didn't get a good deal and your morale won't be very high. And if you do believe that now you're capable of getting this, you'll go somewhere else if they will pay you that, and they can pay you that. So they don't want you to believe that. Right? So don't get your information from the recruiter. The recruiter is your opponent. They have a vested interest in having you believe lies about how much you're worth and what you should be happy with and what's reasonable, right? How do you discover the reality, like the true facts? You don't get it from these people. You go out and get other job offers, or you do other things that give you real world evidence. So if you get another company that's willing to pay you 80, no one can tell you you're not worth 80. That's unrealistic. You see what I'm saying? I have evidence that I'm worth 80. They're prepared to pay me 80. And if I accept their job offer, I'll be making 80. In what way am I not worth 80? Right? Now, am I worth 90? You don't know. No one knows. Go out and see if you can get a job for where they offer you 90. If you can't, that suggests you may not be worth 90. But if you can, then it's conclusive evidence that you are. That's how this stuff works. If you don't know the answers to this, they certainly don't, right? So that's what it's based on. Don't get your information about how much you're worth from the recruiter who's sitting across the table from you. They want you to believe you're worth 20, and you should be very happy to get 25. That's what they want you to believe. That's what negotiation is. You want the other person to believe what you would have them believe, right? And they'll try all kinds of tactics to get that. The most obvious of which is they just tell you. And you think, well, they told me this, so it must be true, right? And unfortunately, that's how a lot of people get exploited. Mr. Friendly says, thanks, I agree with you in every step. I was not suggesting an adversarial approach. Yeah, no problem. No problem, Mr. Friendly. You're asking some intelligent questions. TTC, companies, 30 to 38, what's GBP? Great British Pounds or something? Going for jobs offering up to 40. So when asked I mentioned 36 to 38. Afterwards, build and prove my worthiness, and they normally will offer me my max, which is 38 or even 40. Okay, great. Now that's going to vary by industry, though. That's not like a universal thing. Sometimes it's quite the opposite. Sometimes, you say anything other than the minimum, they'll reject you outright. So I'm glad that's working for you, and that's obviously the right strategy to employ in that situation. But just keep in mind, that this stuff varies by industry, it varies by geographic region, it varies by economic conditions. So when there's a boom, maybe you can get away with this. When there's a bust cycle, like a recession, you can't. It depends on what's going on. And not the economy at large, but that specific industry that goes through its boom bust cycles like this. Sometimes one year everybody's hiring in that industry, and sometimes one year everybody's laying off, right? So that can be independent of the larger economy. Every industry is kind of doing this all at different times and periods and all that. So, and some aren't cyclical, right? Like it's not a seasonal or cyclical thing. It's just random. So it depends where that industry is too. So you gotta just figure out what the reality is for you now, where you're looking. And that's why you go and you get evidence, right? Doesn't matter what the larger economy is doing. Doesn't matter what this industry. I want to know what applies to me now, right? So that's what your goal should be, to get real world evidence. And that's what you go off, not what somebody tells you, especially your opponent who has a vested interest in paying you less money, right? Yeah. So there you go, Hassan. So yeah, that's what I would say. We've got to the end of the feed there. Get in the chat and ask me some questions. Sometimes I feel like I'm taking too long to answer people's questions. It's too wordy. But then we reach the end like this, and then there's nothing to say. Also, thank God it's Friday. TGIF, right? And TGIF the 13th. It's Friday the 13th. So happy Friday the 13th to everyone. I hope that you have good luck today, right? For those of you who believe in that kind of thing. You walk down the street and an anvil doesn't fall out of the sky and land on your head. I wish you that, where it doesn't land on your head. It might land next to you, right? Might land on your person over there that's annoying you, but not on you. So yeah. Anyway, if we don't get any comments soon, I might have to wrap this up. But I'll be back next week. I have several live streams I do every week. I've been adding more of these this year, and a couple recently, because quite frankly, I enjoy them. They're very easy to do. I also talk about business, so tune in for that on Mondays. And also, while I have a moment, if you want to go deeper with this stuff, if this is like, how to get a job and how to negotiate salary and all that kind of stuff, if you want to go deeper, check out that course, because that's where I put like sort of everything all, in a logical order with templates and processes and all that kind of stuff. I also go into the different ways of getting a job, right? So if you're the type of person that's just applying to job postings online, you are missing out on so many opportunities. And if you want to learn how to tap some of those, take that. Okay, get that course. There's a link in the description. If you are further advanced in your career and you're wanting to move up into management, especially executive management, check out that. That's some of the communication skills you're going to need to operate at that level. So that's where I've shared all my sort of tips about that kind of stuff. Very, very important for, people that want to move into management. At a lower level, like supervisory level, you might need a bit of this stuff, but not that much. Middle management, you might need more of it. But upper middle management or executive level, you need more advanced communication skills. Not necessarily in writing, like it's not all about writing, but it's about knowing what to say in different situations. That's the course where I share all that stuff. So once again, check that out. There's a link in the description. It'll really help you tack on some of those skills. Youssef is here. Yusuf says, my friend was let know that he was selected by a company and all left is the contract. Okay. It's been more than 4 weeks that they didn't send anything and HR acting dismissive. Well, Yusuf, unfortunately, that's not a good sign. Listen, you don't know what's going on the other end. Okay. You just don't. Sometimes they're playing all kinds of shenanigans. Sometimes it's all above board, but there's just a delay for an understandable reason. Maybe somebody went on vacation. I did a video years ago describing a situation I was in where, like years ago, where I got a job, but it involved 9 interviews and I was ghosted halfway through the process where like they just stopped responding. And so because I had invested so much time in this, and it was a really good job, I followed up with the company, and it turned out that the recruiter that was my main contact for this job opportunity, it turns out that they had just left the company, and they didn't announce this to me or anything. So they just up and left, and the person on the other end of the phone was like, "Oh, I'm glad you reached out because yes, we are still pursuing this, and we'd like to pick up the process with you. It's just that it's going to be with a different person because the old person left." So I thought, okay. So they brought me back in and I had to almost start all over again, but it worked out, right? So you never really know what's going on. You don't have to know what's going on. You really don't. I know we all have a burning curiosity to know exactly what's going on the other end with these people. What are they thinking? What are they doing? But really, the more you obsess about that, the more you think about that, the more insane you're going to go. You have no control over it. You have no way of finding out what's going on. So your focus in a job search should be just to move forward, just to keep pursuing opportunities, keep applying for jobs, keep doing networking and other things that will get you hired. And look forward. Don't stop to look back all the time. Don't worry about, I'm going to wait by the phone for these people to call, and then I'm going to get upset every hour that they don't. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. If they want to hire you, great. If they're too confused or too stupid or too disorganized to do it, or, you know what I mean? Like they just don't have their act together, or it turns out that, the job was canceled, or, you don't know. Then fine, whatever. If you call me, I'm here. If you don't call me, I'm moving on. That's what your attitude should be. It's easier said than done, but that's what you should shoot for. Keep looking forward. Throw yourself into pursuing more opportunities instead of stopping, and looking back and, playing mental games with yourself. You know what I'm saying? Yusuf says he has a contract inside and he was like, they are not sure anymore and they might want to prioritize someone inside. Listen, if they do, fine, whatever, Like, why should you concern yourself with their little soap opera? If they want to hire him, like this is your friend, if they want to hire him or her, great. If they call and say, we'd like to move forward with this, great. Until then, you're pursuing, or your friend is pursuing opportunities, and someone could snap him up in the meantime, him or her, right? That's the reality. Keep moving forward. Don't stop your job search and just obsess over this and look back. You know what I mean? If your friend has a lot of value and these people, might not see it, fine. Somebody else will probably see it in the meantime. Okay? Eye repair. What if I'm not a poker person? All this cat and mouse games is very frustrating for me. Yes, I agree. What can I do to avoid it or at least make process less painful? It's simple. You can be exploited. Listen, this is the process they are playing with you. Now, if you don't like it, you don't have to engage in it. Just accept the low offer they give you. Or play right into their machinations to make you an offer that's less than your value. Like if that's worth it to you, then having to engage in cat and mouse games because you're not a poker player, that's fine. That's what works for you. You don't have to do anything. Do what you're comfortable with. All I'm saying is that if you're interested, these are the games they are playing on you. And it is to your advantage to be aware of them and to do a couple of simple little things that can easily make you a lot more money, right? That's all I'm saying. Now, if you could get $10,000 more a year, would that be worth 1 hour of awkwardness? For some people, it would be. For some people, it might not. So, listen, it's different strokes for different folks. I'm not going to judge you for it. But all I'm saying is that this is what's going on in the vast majority of situations. And there are little things you can do to make sure that you don't end up being the loser on it. I understand that you don't enjoy it. People don't do this because they enjoy it. People do this because they get $10,000 more a year, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the way I see it. Okay? Any kind of deal you want to make, you can just accept anyone's opening bid. Like if you're buying a house or you're buying a car or whatever, you go down to buy a car and the salesperson says oh, it costs this. And you go, okay, where do I sign? Some people do that. It's perfectly fine. That's what works for them. But a lot of people, maybe at some point in their lives, they get to a point where they say, you know what? I could do that, but I'm going to try this just to see if I can. If I ask them to lower the price, sometimes they do. And I'll try that, And then it gets more sophisticated from there, right? It's not a conspiracy and it's not, something that you have to engage in. It's just some people choose to because they realize that it's to their advantage to be a bit more aware of this stuff. That's all. But I appreciate you saying that, iRepair, and you're awesome, okay? It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you want to do. You have control over yourself, and, as does everyone. So follow your bliss. V8 Super Special says, hi, Bill. Is there a way to spot hidden gems like high-paying positions that are not immediate to spot? Absolutely. It's called the hidden job market. Look there. Now, a lot of people are just ideologically opposed to the fact that this exists. They think it's something it's not. They think it's some weird conspiracy, or they think it's just, false. It doesn't actually exist when it does. Then they think, oh, it does exist, but I could never, participate in going for those jobs or, engage in the activities you would need to do to put yourself forward for those jobs. Different people react very differently. I've found it's a very tough sell just to the general public to try and clue them into this, because people are just vehemently opposed to the entire idea. They say, no, it doesn't exist. It's look, I've built a business by tapping into that. The last several jobs in my career were all gotten on the hidden job market. It wasn't slimy. It wasn't some weird favoritism. It's just that there's real reasons why things are done a certain way if you understand how things work. People have the right to hire who they want, and all of us have the right to reach out and talk to whoever we want. Whether they accept that and talk to you or not is up to them. But you can reach out to them and say, hey, I'm great at this. I'd love to work for you. If ever you're looking, let me know. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And the reality is that a lot of hiring managers would prefer to hire somebody through that method rather than having to post a job and talk, considering 1,000 strangers all side by side who all just care about money and don't really care about the job. That's why they're applying for it, right? They'd rather hire someone who has the initiative and the enthusiasm to say, I'd love to work for your company. I'd love to do this job. I'm great at this. And you guys, are the top dog when it comes to this. If ever you're looking, please hire me. They love that. But it's such a tough sell. So if you are open to this, if this is something that, as I'm saying this stuff to you, you're not going, oh, that's crap, or that's a lie, or you're not thinking that's something I can't do. Learn about it. Okay, now Youssef immediately says, how does one tap into the hidden job market? Okay, so in the description box of this live stream, okay, which is right under the video feed usually, I've got a bunch of links to all kinds of stuff. And I've got a section called resources, and it's got 3 videos linked. They're all videos of mine. They're a couple years old. One of them's called Hidden Job Market. Okay, so watch that. Another one is called How Successful People Get Jobs. And that's where I'm showing you with like a screenshot of my desktop how you can go about surfacing these things. It gives you an idea of like the stuff that's available to you. Okay. Then if you watch those and you're not ideologically opposed to the entire thing or something, check that out, because I put the entire method in there. It's not something I can explain in 5 or 10 minutes. It's complicated. It's complicated because there's a lot of principles you got to understand, as I hit my monitor. And it takes time to like lay out these principles. And once you know how things work, then you understand why you would follow a certain method to do it and how you would go about doing it, right? Okay, because the thing is, in order to look for hidden jobs, you've got to talk to people who have the power to hire you. And those are people higher up, right? You know, now a lot of people, once again, they hear that and they go, oh, I could never talk to people that have the power to hire me. They're up there, I'm down here. Who am I to talk to them, right? Like that's a common reaction that a lot of people have. It's stupid. I have taught students that are like average age is under 25 in university how to do this. And they've had to do it for the capstone project in postgraduate management programs, where it's like, here, I'm going to show you how to get informational interviews with CEOs of companies in your hometown, like this, this town where I am, and whatever particular industry you're in. If you're interested in fashion, or you're interested in engineering, or you're interested in aerospace, whatever, I'm going to show you how to go and, get yourself some sit down face-to-face meetings with the CEOs of the leading companies in those industries here. And you're going to go out and do it. And you get bonus marks for taking a selfie with you shaking hands with the CEO. And I've taught classes on this, and students have gone out and done it, but whenever I mention it publicly, a big reaction people have is, oh, that's impossible. And then, oh, it is possible. Well, I could never do it. It's like, wrong. You just need to know what to do. Okay. So look, check out that stuff. Usually this is stuff that people learn as they get to the second half of their career. Okay. But I understand for young people or whatever, it's a tough sell, but if you're open-minded and you want to do this, you can do it. Okay. And one of the reasons you can do it is because most people are not doing it. You really can elevate yourself above the crowd by being the only person that shows up, That alone will open doors for you. Okay. You don't do this to every job. You don't do this to every company, but you do it to the ones that, like where you want to work, what would be a dream job for you, right? And you can get those. Anyway, so check those out. Start with the free videos I've got here. Do your own research. Don't take my word for any of it. But if you really want the sort of how-to guide, I put it all into that course. That's got several things in it, and this is one of them. Great advice as always. Thank you, Youssef. And thank you, I Repair. Awesome answer. Thank you. Listen, thank you for being so mature about that. A lot of people ask me these questions that I kind of interpret as sort of somewhat hostile. Like they say, they're a little bit skeptical. They say, I don't agree with that, or I don't think that's really what I should do. And I have to sort of back up what I'm saying and usually people end up getting defensive or whatever. So thanks for being so mature about that. Hopefully, do your own research. Don't just get your advice from any one source. Like, don't just listen to me or whoever. Go out and get your advice from a variety of sources, and don't just listen to advice. Go out and try things, because the most powerful evidence that forms your opinions and your capabilities is what you've seen with your own eyes and done with your own hands. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody can tell me you can't get informational interviews, because I've got hundreds of them with executives I didn't know, with mainly CEOs, right? You can't tell me that can't be done. That's ridiculous. No matter, even if 1,000 people all told me that in a row, I would dismiss all of them because I've done it. That's the best evidence of all. So get some good advice from a variety of sources, and then go out and start trying things and see what you can do. And then no one can challenge you on what you can do and what you can't do, because you've done it. Gabriel says, hope everyone is here. In terms of that question about salary, I just lie and say I make more so I can get a raise. Okay. Michael says, I got one job offer 2 years ago by speaking directly to the CEO of a small company, following your advice. Thank you. Good. I'm glad it worked out, Michael. Yeah. This is the thing. Like, how can I put this politely? Here's kind of my philosophy. I don't know if you agree. You don't have to agree with me, but this is what I think. I think, at least this has been my experience, the educational system wants us to be sheep. They value people who follow the rules, stay in their lane, do what they're told, follow procedure, right? Don't question. It's not necessarily this horrible thing like that's a big conspiracy, but that's what's easiest for them. If you're a teacher in a class and you got 30 kids or whatever, it's hard for you if they're questioning and they're challenging rules and they're not doing what they're told. You know what I mean? It's easy if you just tell them to do something and they all do it without question, and they don't ever question, they don't challenge your authority. It's just easier to manage, right? So as a result, we grow up and we're sort of told what to do. And we get kind of conditioned that, I'm just going to be told what to do. So when you get to, the end of like high school or whatever, you're confronting reality. Reality is you can do what you want. You don't have to go to continuing education. You don't have to get a job. I mean, you could do all kinds of things. It's really up to you what you want to do. There is no right or wrong universally. And that's where people fail. That's where they're not being told what to do. So they've got a problem with that. And if you decide to get a job at whatever stage, this is where you're told, okay, you have to apply here. This is what we want you to do. You send an application here, and then we will do, this is our process. And they lead you through it. And once again, it's good for them, but it may not be ideal for you, right? Following their procedure that they say, this is what you have to do, And for the people that question and are willing to test some of these rules, for some rules, you find that they're not in fact rules. It was just a lie. It's something that's convenient for them, but not necessarily in your best interest. And that's what kind of the hidden job market is. If employers have the right to hire whom they want. So if someone just shows up and says like, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And they say, okay, you say, and the person says, hi, I have these skills. I work in this area. I know you guys do this kind of work, and I'm great at doing this. And I just want you to know that if ever you're looking for someone who can do that really, really well, I would love to work for you. If there's ever any opportunity, I hope that you will call me first, because I feel I can really add some value. That's it. That's the whole message. Right now, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from communicating this to people. And there's no reason why someone who has the power to open doors for you, give you a job, or do contract work or whatever, why they wouldn't talk to you. Some people won't, maybe because they're busy or something, or they don't know what it's about, but other people will. You say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? Just to let you know this. It actually is a good thing for them, because they are looking for people to work with who are passionate about doing that work. They're not just in it for the money. They actually care about doing this work. That's one of their goals, is to find people like that. So you're giving them kind of what they want, right? And when you think about it, if you've approached someone and you've said this, maybe you did it in person, or maybe they've met you in person or whatever, that's even better, because now if they post a job, they have a choice between, do I hire the person that I've already met, so I know how professional they are, I know how likable they are, I know if we fit, if we click together as people, I know what their communication skills are like, and I also know that they show a bit of initiative, okay, and they are obviously enthusiastic with this kind of work, because it wouldn't make sense for them to do it otherwise. Do I hire them, or do I give them a chance first, or do I hire a stranger that I haven't met? Their resume could be a complete fabrication. Like if you were that employer, what would you do? You'd probably give the person you met a chance first, right? So, like these are some of the facts of how things work, right? So, the other thing is what I've heard for years, and my experience is consistent with this, is that there are more jobs in the hidden job market than there are in the posted job market. A lot of job seekers are all looking at the posted job market. There's less people looking in the hidden job market, and there's a greater number of jobs in the hidden job market. And they're usually better quality jobs, because you don't need to post them, because the moment you mention to anyone around you that, we've got this vacancy, they're very desirable jobs, and that word gets around, and people say to you, oh, I've got a brother or a cousin or a friend that would be perfect for that. Can I arrange for them to come in for an interview? You don't need to post the job. They're desirable jobs. So the job doesn't get posted, but it gets filled. And normally, if you just looked in the posted job market, you wouldn't see these, right? Whereas if you're looking in the hidden job market, these are now available to you, and you can put yourself forward for them. So anyway, I'm not going to go on anymore. I tend to go on a rant about this. So, but if that's interesting to you, check out those resources I have called Hidden Job Market and How Successful People Get Jobs. And if you really want to go deep and learn the whole method and start employing it, check out that course. It's all in that course, like with templates and the process and everything. Youssef says, you're actually giving life advice and much more than just getting hired. I love it. The problem is challenges only start after one gets a job. Internal politics could be another possible. Listen, there's a million challenges. There could be all kinds of politics. Yes, that stuff happens. But you know what I mean? Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. You know what I mean? So you're looking everywhere, right? And just like applying for a job, it's like saying, well, I don't want to apply for a job because there's a chance they could reject me. It's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. They could. In which case, yes, it would have been a waste of your time. But you apply to another job and they don't reject you. They bring you in for interviews and they hire you. So, you know what I mean? Should you not apply because they could reject you? The usual answer is no, right? You just accept that some things don't work out. It's like the sales process. That's what salespeople do every day. They pursue 100 opportunities. They get 5 yeses. But those 5 yeses have just made the company $50,000. You know what I mean? So it's well worth doing. Gabriel says, the educational system is so removed from reality. People are conditioned to think that if you can't get something right the first time, you should give up. The true success is only through failing a lot. Yeah, listen, you're absolutely right. I think something that's not talked about enough is that although you are absolutely correct, I wholeheartedly agree with you, failing at things is not fun. And most people will have a limit. to how much failure they can take before they stop volunteering to put themselves in situations where they will likely fail. You know what I'm saying? So there's kind of a sweet spot in there. Yes, you've got to try stuff and risk failing, but trying like 100 things and failing at all of them and then telling yourself, well, at least I learned a lot. Sometimes that just doesn't feel good. And as a result, you will not continue doing that activity, right? So you've got to strike a balance. You've got to step outside of yourself and learn and grow and try things. But you have to do it in somewhat of a controlled way so that you can sustain this and not go insane. And you've got to limit the damage and the risk, right? Like in the world of business, in entrepreneurial things, like you try your hand at doing stuff. If each time you try, it costs you $50,000 to try a business idea, after X many failures, you can't sustain that. You know what I mean? So you've got to do it in a certain way that it's manageable, put it that way. That's the reason why you don't see more people doing this, because failure stings. No one wants to mention that. How do you manage the negative effects of these failures, and not get turned off, and instead say to yourself, no one's making me do this, but I'm going to try again, right? If it stung last time and it cost you a lot of money and, your self-esteem went right down to this, you're probably not going to want to do it again, right? So to me, that's more of the real issue. Once we've realized the principle you just said. YouTube says, how would you answer the question, why our company, if that's irrelevant to the live stream? I will answer that, and then I have to probably end this pretty soon. But yeah, that's another form of saying, why do you want to work for us, right? Like, that's a more standard traditional question where they say, like, why do you want to work for us? The problem with phrasing it like that is that everyone, misinterprets what they're asking, and they say, well, I want to work for you so I don't starve, so I have a job, so I can eat, right? That's not what they're asking. They're asking, why do you want to work for us as opposed to somebody else? Do you just not care who you work for? Why are you specifically coming to us for a job? Because if you then say, well, I just need a job, I'll look anywhere people are hiring, that's a fail. They don't want that answer. They want someone who specifically wants to work for them for a real reason, right? So that's like a rephrasing of this question here. Why our company? So what they're pushing for here is they're pushing for, have you done some basic research into who we are, right? So this is your opportunity to say the stuff that you might have learned looking the company up. So if you know that they're in this business, maybe they're the leader, or maybe they're not the leader, but they're doing something interesting. They've got a unique business strategy or a unique product line, or they're the only player in that industry that also does this. I'm interviewing at the jewelry store to be a jeweler. Now there's 10 jewelry stores I could have worked for. But why am I coming to you guys? I'm coming to you guys because you're the only one of these jewelry stores that is also in the gold mining business. And because you guys do both gold mining and jewelry, I think that there's some unique opportunities that you guys have that other people don't. You guys are vertically integrated. You have control over, the type of gold alloy or what you can do with it. You could create new alloys and put it into jewelry that only you can sell. That's really exciting to me. I'm interested in alloys. I'm interested in metallurgy as well as jewelry. So this is a perfect fit for me. Something like that. And they go, you know about us. And that makes a lot of sense. I now believe that you're not just out for any old job, but you specifically want to work for us. And therefore you pass the question. Does that make sense? So that's what I'll say about that. But that's a good question. Okay. It's been an hour and a half. I have to wind this down. Check out that course if you want to learn about the hidden job market, or you just want to get hired, like through more conventional means too. That's the course. That's where I put all my advice all in one place. There's a link in the description box under this video. And I've also made videos that are like frequently asked questions about my courses, so you know what you're getting into before you decide to pull the trigger. If you're looking to climb the ladder, you want to get into more senior management, check out that course. That's a course for you. And if you're wanting to learn business, we don't really talk about business in this live stream, but if you have plans to start your own business or have a side hustle or anything, check that out, the $100 MBA course. As I smack my microphone around, it will not stay up by itself. So that's where we need a little friendly persuasion, shall we say. So thank you guys for being here. You guys have been awesome. You've asked some very intelligent questions. I wish you nothing but the best. I will be back next week. So if you have more questions or you want to run stuff by me, if I can help, attend some of my live streams next week. And I'll be back at the same time a week from now for another episode of Honest HR Nitrous. Thanks a bunch, everyone. Have a great weekend.